Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Jake from College Football Red Zone reporting live with a brand new team to talk about as we get inside the top 90. We find ourselves in the 80s now, so that means that we have covered almost 60 teams now in this deep dive. So I really appreciate the love that's being given in the deep dive series for this one. And if you guys have been enjoying things, make sure you go ahead, hit that like button, as well as hit that subscribe button as well if you do happen to be brand new. And in this iteration of the First Look series, where I take a look at all 138 programs from a 50,000 feet holistic standpoint, today we find ourselves back in the great state of Ohio, where we are going to talk about the Miami Redhawks. And for the first time in this First Look series, talking about a team that I might very well have as a team capable of winning the their respective conference. This team is my current favorite actually to win the MAC, and I'll have those full MAC rankings at the end of this video because this will be the last MAC team that we talk about. And that is going to be the Miami Redhawks, who find themselves led by Chuck Martin, one of the longest tenured head coaches in this conference, entering year number 13. And he has an average record of 72 and 74 in his tenure, but he has some success, especially in recent memory, leading them to a conference title in 2019 prior to really the NIL and the transfer portal taking off, but also doing a solid job of adjusting to those new elements being introduced to college football over the past few years, as his Miami football team was responsible for also winning the 2023 MAC title just a couple of years ago. They ended up winning free of the, or not winning, but they've been to three of the last four MAC title games as well. So not only a team that I look at as possibly the best team in this conference from a roster talent perspective, but really giving credit to what Chuck Martin has done over the past few years. And even though last year, a little bit of a down year because of things that were really not in his control. The DeQuan Finn situation where dude quit in the middle of the year to prepare for the NFL draft. That was a really interesting head scratcher, to say the least. But in spite of that, had Miami playing for a conference title. And so that definitely needs to be appreciated. And looking at this roster this year in comparison to last year, you could really sit back and make an argument that this team holistically is going to be better than what it was last year. And again, we talked about last year, Miami making it to Detroit, and they have been a consistent representative in Detroit over the last few years for that MAC title game. But certainly not a team that comes without its fair share of questions, right? Two questions that I'm really keeping an eye on is where are they going to get a pass rush from? Because they do end up losing Adam Trick in the transfer portal. He goes to Texas Tech. He's going to be competing for meaningful playing time and more exposure to try and boost his NFL stock. But he was a superstar at Miami over the years and certainly developed into one after being an underutilized recruit back in the day. So, where is that pass rush coming from? Because you're looking at this roster holistically and you look at who they brought in the transfer portal. They didn't necessarily bring in any guys that have production on the defensive line at their previous stops. So, that is going to be a question that they're going to need to figure out is how are they going to try to replace the production loss from Adam Trick as he goes to the next stage of his football career, and that is be part of a what could be a really good defensive line out there in Lubbock, Texas. And then who's this quarterback going to throw the football to as well, right? Because you're going to lose two top receivers. Cam Perry is the more notable name here. He had almost 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns last year. Ends up going to Colorado to try and revive what was a difficult offensive year for Coach Prime, as he's trying to get some weapons for Julian Lewis, who is looking to take over at Colorado. And then Cole Weaver transfers to Syracuse. Didn't find the end zone very much. Actually, He only found it one singular time the entire year, but he had almost 650 yards, so it was a solid year in his own right in what was a little bit of an inconsistent passing attack. Well, he's going to go join Fran Brown as they're looking to turn their program around after a really disappointing year, but trying to provide an additional weapon for Steve Gelly, who is looking to turn back as well. But on the flip side, you could also look at this team and have plenty of optimism going into this year. I think the offensive line, for example, could be a strength of this football team. Not only is Eric Smith a third team All MAC player coming back and playing for the Redhawks in 2026, but they also managed to add a few other pieces on the offensive line as well. Elvin Malcor out of Northern Illinois, Sean Shehu, was dominant at Saginaw Valley State, and then how about Brian Badash Jr., who transfers from Duquesne, coming from the FCS ranks, but he was dominant in his own right as well. So if some of those guys can gel and are willing to maybe slide into the interior, those are all guys that you can play at once, and right away you can have a really good offensive line. Bare minimum, you're going to have a deep tackle group, which will be nice, and it's rare to see, especially at the G6 ranks as well. I think they might also have one of the undersung heroes at running back this year as well. Keep an eye out for Rodney Nelson transferring in from Monmouth. This dude was a monster for Monmouth last year, a team that almost made the FCS playoffs thanks to this guy. 2,000 yards of total offense. I mean, that's incredibly insane to think about. He found the end zone 19 times. This dude has a lot of juice, and if he can get himself on the field and handles business and bringing summer ball, he's going to be fun to watch, especially in MAC play, man. I cannot wait to watch Rodney Nelson play. And I also can't wait to watch Blaine Myrick play as well. Transferring in from South Alabama from that linebacker position, played some good ball at linebacker, 80 tackles and 6 TFLs last year. So even with the loss of Adam Trick, I still think this defense is going to be okay. And it's not just because they brought in Blaine Myrick that will lead ultimately to an improvement in the linebacking room. But I also liked the shots in the dark that they took in the secondary as well. They added Ben Myrick, the safety out of Notre Dame, as well as Dylan Tatum, the corner out of Northwestern. Both of those guys have not seen the field too terribly much, but they were both four-star recruits coming out of high school. So it's a couple of blue trippers that are coming into your program to help boost things up in the secondary. So really outside of the defensive line, you could say that holistically, the entire defense also could be better as well. So it's a team that could, they lost to Western Michigan in the title game last fall, and they're going to be looking to get that get back, so to speak. So much so, as I talked about it earlier, I think Miami is going to be your MAC champion based on how things currently stand in the 2026 season. Now, let's see how Miami gets there because we got to pull up that schedule real quick, right? So here's what Miami's got going on. The non-conference schedule is not going to be ideal by any means. They do have Pitt on the road as well as a neutral site game with Cincinnati. I think those two games are going to be a little bit tough to ask for them moving forward. But then you look at all these other games. I think all these other games are winnable games. I think Miami can win 10 games going into this year. It really starts out with the Holy Cross game. But really, 3 games that I'm keeping an eye on that's going to define Miami's season more than anything. Because I do have the Miami Redhawks with one of the higher floors in the G6. I look at that UConn game at home, getting a chance to coach against Jason Candle once again, but he has a brand new program. UConn is coming into your building. What does UConn look like? But we're going to figure out a lot about Miami, especially after those first few games as well. Just cannot afford to drop to 1-3 because it sets a rough tone going into conference play. The Central Michigan game on the road could be a challenging road test for the Roadhawks as well, as that encroaches on some midweek action. So with that game happening at home, Central Michigan could be a difficult road test for the Redhawks going into this year. And then the game that could absolutely define who goes to Detroit at the end of the regular season as well. Miami at Western Michigan. And I actually am giving Miami the benefit of the doubt here in that I think that because Miami is the better football program than Western Michigan overall, I think that Miami holistically is going to find a way to win this game, even though they may not be favored on paper. Um, because I will say this, while I have immense respect for Western Michigan, at the same time, I look at historically how things shook out in this conference, and we haven't seen a team repeat than what we have seen in the past 10 to 15 years. So I think that is going to continue here. That game, that Miami and Western Michigan game, I think decide who ends up going to Detroit and who's going to settle for a little bit of a Western Bowl game, frankly. So that those three games could definitely define the season. I think all the other games that they have on their schedule, I think, are very workable. Ohio is not the team that they used to be. Buffalo needs to prove themselves. And then they have some other teams in this conference that I would consider to be in the lower half, whether it's Bowling Green, UMass, Akron, Kent State on the road. While they surprised some folks last year, I would still consider to be in the lower half as well. So the schedule sets up somewhat nicely for Miami once you get out of non-conference play, and the roster is better, which is why I have that 10-2 record. And ultimately, I think we are looking at the 2026 MAC champions going into how things shake out in the springtime. As of right now, things could always change. People can always get hurt or get dismissed from the programs. But as things stand right now, I'm going with the Miami Redhawks winning the MAC in 2026. So we talked about Miami holistically from a schedule standpoint, as well as how things shake out from a roster standpoint. So let's just go ahead and do a quick recap before we sign off in terms of what does the MAC look like to me right now from a conference standpoint. So this is the my personal spring rankings for the MAC as of right now. As you can see, I do have Miami number one, but the team that I think is going to make it to Detroit that is going to surprise some people a little bit, I'm looking at Ohio, surprisingly. I really have some faith in their program. I think John Hauser, what he showed in the bowl game, his poise in getting that team to come together and beat a really good UNLV team led by Dan Mullen. I think that's going to give them some benefit of the doubt. And I think Ohio rides that. I think they're going to be doubted, and they're going to use that as a chip on their shoulder to try and come out and prove some people wrong. And I think they do. I think we'll see Ohio make it to the MAC championship game. Again, based on how things stand in the spring. But yeah, these are my complete MAC rankings in terms of how things stand in the springtime. But again, definitely want to let me know what your thoughts are. Am I too high on Miami? Do you think that Miami should be, am I being too low? Do you think they should be ranked higher than the 89th ranked team in college football? Let me know in the comments section below. But for now, appreciate you guys sitting down and listening to some Miami Redhawks football. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button as well as hit that subscribe button as well. But with that being said, this is Jake from College Football Red Zone signing off. Hoping you guys are all out there having a good one. Take care, everybody.